Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. Check out this next clip, and if you like what you see, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.
So this is the story I wanted to talk to you about. Here's a radical new plan to tax carbon and give everyone in America $2,237. This appeared in Huffington Post. It's about this idea that we should, carbon tax has been floated for many years, and there are going to be consequences to a carbon tax. How much? What is the consequence? What is the externality, the cost of all the carbon we're putting in the air that the companies don't pay for because they're not paying to clean it up? That's just the carbon, all the other things they don't clean up. So, but what that cost would be is an open question. Two Republican congressmen pushing a bill to put a price on planet warming emissions want to tax carbon at $24 per ton. Four Democratic lawmakers pegged the price at $50 per ton in their own legislation. The Trump administration, for its part, settled on something lower, $1 to $7 per ton by 2020. That's shocking that Trump would come in with a low ball.
It's
bid.
weird. His whole cabinet is climate change deniers, and they all wanted that lower. I don't see the connection.
I'm surprised he didn't say the climate owes us money.
The art of the deal.
The climate keeps changing. I'm going to build a wall around it.
And Saturn's going to pay for it. I don't know how it works. So, but to really make a difference, a better answer is something closer to $230 per ton, according to a study by the People's Policy Project, a left-leaning think tank published Wednesday. That would raise the cost of goods and services by roughly $750 billion, including price hikes of 79% for gas, 51% for electricity, 23% for airfare, and 9% for groceries. People are going to feel that, co-author Andres Fremstad, an assistant professor of economics at Colorado State University, said, and the people who will feel that the most are going to be poor people. The article has established that there are going to be costs associated with a carbon tax or putting a price tag on carbon, and the people who are going to have to pay that price are most likely going to be poor people. So far, it sounds like a good solution if you're a right-winger, but we get into the part where we solve that problem. That's where the paper's most radical proposal comes in, offsetting that cost by paying every person in the United States $2,237 per year. It forces the well-to-do to pay their fair share, said Fremstad, and they pollute far more. Support for carbon tax is higher than the limited policy debate in Washington suggests. A study published last October in the journal Environmental Research Letters found the average American would willingly spend $177 per year on a carbon tax, raising electricity prices by about 14.4%. Compared to current electricity rates in each state. Even oil giant ExxonMobil Corporation, a longtime financier of climate change denial think tanks, said it would support a relatively low carbon tax. So we have even Exxon acknowledging that a carbon tax might be critical, and while they have been openly denying climate change and funding climate denial, we know from internal documents that Exxon is known for decades about climate change and that climate change is real. So where are you two on the idea of a carbon tax in general?
Well, I mean, we got to do something, and I like how this whole, for instance, in this plan or in this the way everything unfolded. This is your typical way that science and politics interact. The science community says one thing, the Democrats listen a little bit, the Republicans listen somewhat. Trump just tweets. That's just the most typical thing that goes down. Well, we're saying it's about $230. All right, well, we'll give you 50, and we'll only give you 24. We'll give you $1. Like that's just. But yeah, we got to do something. And I'm looking at this, and it says also, and I know we didn't get to it specifically in the article, but it talks about some of the more specific price hikes: 51% for electricity, 23% for airfare, 9% on groceries. We're already living in a country where, Michael Moore put this statistic out there. A lot of people that live in other places other than their family, about half of Americans can't afford to fly home for the funeral if one of their loved ones dies. So we need to do something about transportation needs in this country, and something should have been done yesterday. I like the idea of seeking more sustainable solutions. It's hard. It's easy to say we can never have a fully extensive rail in this country, because it's not something we've actually tried, and it's something we don't have.
Yeah, we have. It's remarkable how we went from having a can-do spirit in this country to basically a can't-do spirit.
Absolutely,
we used to lead the world in innovation, and I think we can again. Like this thing, I mean, carbon tax, okay, but it just seems like a short-term Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. We need to get off of oil. It's that simple. So when I see ExxonMobil go, this isn't bad, because ExxonMobil knows the reason they need to go, maybe carbon taxes, they know their days are numbered. You know, the governor of the Bank of England gave a speech 3 years ago saying that there's a serious carbon bubble. And what it is, it's not when we run out of oil, it's when investors don't see any long-term profitability. And he said, so we need to deflate this bubble, not let it explode. And I think the solution is not a carbon tax. The solution is what Ron was kind of touching on is and what we talk a lot about as progressives is a Green New Deal. We don't need to like give back some of this carbon tax to the no. Green New Deal, put America to work building wind turbines and solar panels and light rail, and get green energy is a technology. So like any technology, you put more research into it, it gets cheaper, it gets faster, it gets smaller, right? Truthdig just put an article out about a study that said they can convert the Sahara Desert with wind turbines. When you put wind turbines out, you actually lower wind speeds, and you could turn the Sahara Desert, you could change the climate, increase rainfall, bring more vegetation. They did a study. So that's what I'm saying, and we need to put billions of dollars into research in that. Instead of $5 trillion on a ridiculous war on terror, and shocking, 17 years and $5 trillion, we haven't fixed terrorism yet. We should put it into the technology, not this Mickey Mouse. This is just Washington, D.C. like bitching. Is it $1? Is it 24? Is it 50? No, man, like chuck it and build some wind turbines, put Americans to work in high-paying union jobs, fixing the environment, because by 2030, if we don't do something about it, if there's not drastic change by 2030, it's irreversible. Right. So I don't want to listen to Trump and his tweets and the idiots at the 2 whorehouse parties complain about who's going to tax soda pop. You know, I just shut up and get to work on a Green New Deal. GrahamElwood.com.
Yeah, what ExxonMobil did in this, for instance, they ran some numbers and they decided it's better to have a tax that is just going to be factored into the cost of doing business, because we would have a greater cost if, like Graham pointed out, people stop investing, they don't see the long-term potential. So they're trying to just prolong the inevitable.
Well, what's interesting, another interesting aspect of it is that if you, I mean, it'd be very difficult to get the $2,200 for every American, whatever, out of the oil companies, but it would entrench the idea that we have to keep producing oil to get that money and funnel that money to Americans. So Americans would have a vested financial interest in continuing to spew carbon into the air.
I'm getting $2,200 extra a year from the oil lobby. Well, I guess I'm not buying an electric car now, am I?
Right. I mean, that's, you know, that maybe is sort of, but yeah, but that's certainly what I think ExxonMobil, their calculus is part of it. Let's finish the article because there's more I want to talk about with this. So a lot of people suggest that putting this carbon tax is going to slow down economic growth, and that is presumed to be a negative. Even a carbon price twice as high as Fremstad's proposal would not avert the catastrophic forecast for how the climate will change once the planet warms beyond 2 degrees Celsius. A United Nations study last year found that a carbon price of $573 per ton, paired with a resource extraction tax and rapid technological innovation, would still lead to 132 billion metric tons of CO2 by 2050, according to a recently published foreign policy essay arguing that economic growth itself cannot be green. For his part, Fremstad said there's no reason to think his proposal would slow down growth. This would redirect technology innovation from the next form of fracking to solar and wind and mass transit, he said. We're trying to change the structure of the economy, but not the speed at which it grows. There's the question of whether economic growth is even the objective, whether that should be a desideratum, and because economic growth is a sort of this notion that we all have because of capitalism, that we have to constantly be growing. It's been the famous quote that growth for its own sake is the ideology of the cancer cell. And so they're trying to build into this policy that it's okay, we're gonna keep growing, we're gonna keep producing, generating, consuming. So that's okay. So it seems like to me there's there's 2 sides to this that they're not really addressing, but I want to talk about with you. He said this would redirect technology innovation from the next form of fracking to solar and wind and mass transit, he said. We're trying to change the structure of the economy, but not the speed at which it grows. But he said an ambitious 3-digit carbon tax is just one of a suite of policies needed to reduce surging emissions from burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial farming. Progressive candidates and policy advocates over the past year have rallied around various emissions curbing proposals, including a Green New Deal, there you go, Graham, a fiscal stimulus plan to potentially spent trillions on renewable energy and home weatherization in an infrastructure building spree not seen since World War II. But Fremstad warned that funding such a plan with a carbon tax risks exacerbating economic inequality at a time when the British charity Oxfam estimates the average person in the top 1% already creates 175 times more carbon pollution. If we give all the money back to people in lump sum payments, it's sort of sweetener that can make the policy politically viable, he said. We'll need money for public projects too, but that money should be raised through progressive taxation and public borrowing like it always should be for big public projects. Of course, carbon pricing still faces considerable opposition. In July, the House of Representatives voted 229 to 180 to pass a resolution formally declaring a carbon tax detrimental to the US economy. Grover Norquist, an anti-tax crusader with influence on the GOP, has railed against carbon pricing schemes. So what I wanted to get to talk about is, so he's saying there are various ways we can mitigate this. We can give people money back, but the government needs to spend the money. But one of the interesting things is how he said that the average 1%er uses up 175 times the resources. It doesn't say who, but it presumably means someone in the third world. I mean, we hear about, oh, in the third world they're overpopulating and we got to stop the world overpopulation. It's not them overpopulating, it's us overconsuming that are really causing the problems. But bottom line is consumption is a problem, and what the overall idea of a carbon tax is to say, look, we have a capitalist system and capitalism seeks to exploit whatever it can for profit, and it will exploit those resources until they're gone, regardless of the damage it does externally, called externalities, and to maximize profit. We need to, as a government, as people, put restraints on capitalism. We need to tax some of those profits and to mitigate the damage done by capitalism. When it seems like the real solution is to say, how about we don't have capitalism, which is the system, instead of just constantly trying to rein in capitalism and it's just full bore, going to destroy and destroy and destroy and consume and consume and consume. How about we step back and say, okay, maybe we don't want a system that just constantly needs to be restrained, and we design a different system. I know that's a bigger picture, but the one thing I want to share with you is I've been reading Peter Joseph's book, The New Human Rights Movement, and I was struck that he mentioned in it that the IMF rates that the annual cost of fossil fuel externalities alone, just fossil fuels, is $5.3 trillion a year. So that's profits they're making that we are collectively paying the costs of, that they are not having, they don't have to pay those costs. We collectively pay them. And he also that the global government's subsidies are $500 billion a year worldwide. So that's direct money given to the fossil fuel industry from the United States and other governments. And then the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity found that no industry in the world would be profitable if they had to pay for all their externalities. Zero. No, not just fossil fuels, nobody. Walmart wouldn't be profitable, Nike wouldn't be profitable, no matter how much they love Kyle Kaepernick. None of them, because of the externalities, but we all collectively pay the price. It's socialism for the few and rugged capitalism for the rest of us, where we have to pay the price. And so that's my question, is like, if we focus on carbon taxes and these sorts of solutions, are we helping to solve the problem, or are we just helping to entrench a system that cannot be stopped? It will destroy the planet, it will kill us off, so we have to, it's admirable, and this idea is admirable because of what they're trying to accomplish, but we're ignoring the elephant in the room, who is dying, by the way, and endangered.
I agree with you, because there's so many things that this article and this study leaves out. Economic growth they talk about. Corporations over the last 30 years have enjoyed a 77% increase. Wages have gone up 12%. So this idea that, oh, it'll hurt economic growth. No. It'll just hurt the 1%ers and the corporations' big fat bottom line. The other thing I always talk about, and it's nowhere near this article, is always the undercurrent. How are we going to pay for it? I don't know. Maybe don't spend $1 trillion a year on war. Gee, I wonder what we could do with that money. And then let's go even further. Let's go even the fact that we're a fiat currency, and then the Fed and Congress, they could give us whatever we want. There's the money for them to give us whatever they want. Tax is a theft. So this idea is all just everything they're talking about is a complete scam. And I think, sure, a carbon tax along with the Green New Deal, could that? Yeah, but it goes back to what you're saying. Then we're still just feeding this horrifying capitalist monster like who does not care. Like profit, jobs. Look, if there's not breathable air and drinkable water, how many jobs are we gonna have? Like, I don't care, the Hamptons are gonna be affected by climate change, just like the inner cities are. The south of France, gonna be affected by climate change. Your 10 yachts are gonna be affected by climate change. So we need real groundbreaking solutions. And one of the things I did agree with is like, yes, we need a like FDR style, New Deal, and that went into World War, everyone needs to get involved in this and change it and find there's solutions that are out there. There's technology companies making a profit. Like, it's out there. We just need to stop. I mean, I gotta throw this again. I just can't listen to this. It's just more, I don't have time. It's the classic arguing, the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, it's just like, we don't got time for it, man.
Well, I mean, to respond to the article specifically, and then I want to respond to some of the big picture stuff you brought up. Like, this seems like the whole all of the above approach on energy. That was a very, very nice flowery way of saying we're going to continue this even though we know it's really bad. This is just another flowery way of saying that. We're just going to. I mean, they brought up the new age of fracking. The whole idea that there's economic growth in that is just it's false.
Clean coal.
Yeah, clean coal.
It's like ethical child pornography.
I mean, all this stuff. I mean, especially fracking specifically, they just exploit resources and then they sell it. It doesn't help us domestically at all. It just pads the pockets of a couple CEOs. That money doesn't go back into the economy. It goes into offshore accounts likely. So it's just straight up not true. And then looking at it big picture, when you bring capitalism into the equation, I saw this video on YouTube where it was trying to describe the history of capitalism, and it was interesting, but they tried to be kind of very neutral. And they say, in every circumstance where capitalism has been tried, it's had the same critiques every single time. And I was like, yeah, that's because that's what it's set up to do. All the crappy stuff it does, it's set up to do that. So it's just gonna keep doing that, and the only way to restrain that is not doing it anymore.
I like this, like Ron's paraphrase. Maybe you wouldn't want to take any credit for this at all, but like every time that we've put a pedophile in charge of a Little League baseball team, they've had the same criticisms.
Yeah, it's just this. It's this semantic nonsense that we don't have time for to justify this egregious thing that is completely out of control. The most profitable time in America, the 50s, they always talk about that, is when capitalism was the most heavily regulated and the most heavily taxed.
And labor was ascendant, and union membership was the highest, and so on and so forth.
On down the line, and you had upward mobility. And if we could try to do that again, but they better play ball. Otherwise, I don't know what's their end game in this? Like what are these 1%ers? What do they think is gonna happen here? They have all the reports. They're not dumb enough to think that climate change isn't happening. They know in the short run it's gonna hurt their bottom line, but they have to be in the back of their head going, uh-oh.
Well, I think it's sort of like the debate about Obamacare, where there are people who are saying Obamacare is it's flawed, but maybe it will help lead us to single payer. And then there are others who said, no, Obamacare is not only flawed, but it further entrenches the health insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry and so on and so forth. So it's a step away from it. And the question is whether this sort of idea with a carbon tax and with a guaranteed basic income could lead to the undermining and exposing in the broader community of Americans in the world to the depredations of capitalism, or if it just further entrenches it and seals our fate. We have more stories to get to, and the next one has to do with McDonald's, and we know about the Fight for 15 probably, about how the nationwide effort for fast food workers they're fighting for a $15 minimum wage, and it's not just fast food workers, but that's been where it's been centered around. There have been protests and strikes and so on and so forth. Fast food industries, for the most part, are not unionized, so these are wildcat strikes, and these are people who are living, paycheck to paycheck if they're lucky, and so for them to strike for these issues is heroic, I think, and admirable, and we should be, applauding them. But there's a new wrinkle to the fight for 15 that some of these fast food workers are getting involved in. And that's what this story from The Intercept is about. McDonald's workers are striking against sexual harassment, tying Me Too to their labor struggle. When Kimberly Lawson was first sexually harassed while working at McDonald's in Kansas City, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. A coworker, she said, had hit on her constantly, made lewd comments, and touched her inappropriately. I filed a complaint, but nothing was done, said the 23-year-old single mother of one. He kept working on the same shifts as me. When Lawson's shift manager also began tormenting her with verbal sexual remarks, she didn't even bother filing a complaint. Galvanized by experiences like these, Lawson, who earns $9 an hour, joined with McDonald's workers from 10 cities to organize a day-long strike on Tuesday. It will be the first nationwide strike specifically targeting sexual harassment in the workplace. The labor action also charts a new course for Me Too, which has mostly featured women in high-profile and white-collar industries. The strike marks a notable step toward shifting Me Too into a movement inclusive of and organized by low-wage workers against corporate America. Coordinated as part of the Fight for $15 movement, the strike makes clear that the battle against sexual harassment and assault is inextricable from a broader labor struggle. It's historic, Lawson told The Intercept. Women are coming together and standing up and creating hope for other women across the country. Lawson, herself a Fight for $15 organizer, was shocked to learn how many fellow McDonald's workers had shared her experience. For workers in the service industry, sexual harassment and violence is the norm, not the exception. A 2014 survey from the worker advocacy group Restaurant Opportunity Center United found that nearly 80% of women in the industry had experienced some form of sexual harassment from coworkers, as had 70% of men, 80% of women, and 55% of men reported sexual harassment from customers. LGBTQ workers were particularly affected, the survey found. Now that's a surprise because you would think it was from what Republicans tell me, it's 80% who make up the accusations, not that they actually are. So those numbers are pretty striking. But what the article also underscores is that the Me Too movement has been centered for the most part around targeting is not the right word, but identifying and exposing high-profile men. If everybody on Twitter knows who Harvey Weinstein is or Bill Cosby and these, but for the average American working in a fast food situation, McDonald's for example, and their assistant manager is harassing them, you can't just go on Twitter and expose him because you don't have that kind of power, there's not that profile.
Well, and I think this is good, and I'm glad the article points this out because #MeToo has no gender in it. It's been largely a woman's movement for sure, but and I've heard some people of color be critical of #MeToo because they're like, it just sounds like it's a bunch of privileged white women trying to, fighting about their privilege. And that statistic you put up there, 80% of women and 70% of men are getting sexually harassed too. So #MeToo, I'm glad it's expanding and also bringing in labor because it's not just men doing this to women, it's women doing this to men. It's, people in power are abusing it, whatever their gender or ethnic makeup are. And especially when you're making $9 an hour, as you just pointed out, you're extremely vulnerable. If you're a millionaire celebrity, yes, it's not easy to speak up if you've been harassed or abused in any capacity, but you have a giant law firm behind you, you have all this stuff, you're making $9 an hour, and if I get fired, because the New York Times put out an article saying that more jobs is not the issue to fight poverty, it's more education. There's all these high-end jobs that are going unfilled because people don't have enough education. So going back to this point here, that Me Too is tying into the labor struggle is good and it's powerful. And I hope that this we're just beginning the conversation. We need to have the conversation about all of it, and it affects labor. Everything's connected. We've talked about this, and it shows what rampant capitalism does. You make $9 an hour, you don't have a value. So that's from the top down. The CEOs are like that, the owners are like that, the managers are like that. What are you gonna do?
You're also very easily replaceable. You raise a stink, we get rid of you.
You're a 25-year-old single mom.
Yeah.
I'll take you out of here.
Yeah, exploitation, I think the point that they're making, larger point, is that exploitation is not just economic exploitation, but that economic and sexual harassment, that kind of exploitation, they all go hand in hand.
Yes.
And to tie them together, it makes sense, and it also raises awareness about this, that these people are vulnerable. They're vulnerable financially. They're vulnerable to the petty tyrants who they potentially work for. Customers also, the companies don't protect them. Previous efforts to take on the fast food giant on the issue of sexual harassment have yielded few results in terms of shifting corporate behavior, Carlson told The Intercept. She filed numerous complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission on behalf of McDonald's workers in 2016, but has seen no changes made by the corporation since. Meanwhile, McDonald's has maintained the line that it has, quote unquote, zero tolerance for sexual harassment in the workplace, a claim belied by the countless instances that have been tolerated by virtue of inaction. We have policies, procedures, and training in place that are specifically designed to prevent sexual harassment at our company and company-owned restaurants, the company said in a statement to the Associated Press. And we firmly believe that our franchisees share this commitment, and I went to some effort not to read that in a high-pitched, annoying voice because I'm an independent journalist.
Just always they come back with their corporate doublespeak. We have a zero tolerance policy, blah. Then why is this happening? Why did this woman, she did everything she was supposed to do.
Right.
And you did nothing.
And her story, you know her story is not unique.
She's one of a million. She's one of millions.
Well, it's not unique, and there's a ton of, I mean, we mentioned some of the obvious connections, but there's even more. You know, there's a connection between abuse of power and sexual harassment. There's also a connection between income inequality and the fact that we don't have tuition-free college. You know, like there's all these connections, and a strike like this is making them. And I mean, I'm in favor of every strike because I think we need a massive strike nationwide. I'm in support of Sunmaid here in California. I'm in support of the teachers. I'm in support of the hotel workers in Chicago. McDonald's is one of the worst culprits out there too. We're talking about some of the worst of the worst. McDonald's is right up there with Nike and Walmart.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. If you like what you saw, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.